Good morning, Sangha. Happy almost New Year. I'm very excited to see the plants here today. It kind of gives me a little bit of a feeling of like, okay, spring is coming. So my name is Monty, and I'm here to welcome everyone. We study together and practice for the benefit of all beings and the living earth. We recognize the suffering caused by biases, prejudices, systems of power, privilege, and oppression based on race, sex, class, age, ethnicity, religion, national origin, ability, sexual orientation, and gender identity of expression. We aspire to do no harm and to dismantle barriers that cause separation and suffering, recognizing that our liberation is interconnected with the liberation of all. And it's important to acknowledge that the land that the Portland Insight Meditation Community is located on now in Portland, Oregon. I'm sorry, I'm just thinking I missed something. It is important to acknowledge the land that Portland Insight Meditation Community is located on in Portland, Oregon. We honor and recognize that the place where we gather is ancestral land for many people, including the Clackamas, Cowlitz, the 7 tribes of the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde, and the 27 bands of Confederated Tribes of Siletz peoples. We respectfully acknowledge in all Indigenous communities of the past, present, and the future. The Indigenous peoples of this land were forced to leave for the benefit of colonists and settlers. We acknowledge the systemic policies of genocide, relocation, and assimilation that still impact Indigenous families today. We are grateful for their stewardship of these lands and acknowledge the benefit we continue to receive and benefit from them. We are committed to remain mindful of and make ongoing efforts to recognize their knowledge, creativity, and resilience. Something I just wanted to mention, yesterday in the paper, there was a really interesting article about a water and estuary restoration project on I believe it was the Siletz River on the coast. And it was really interesting because the tribes there were very involved in getting the land restored. It's just beginning into its more natural state. And it was just heartening to see that there are ways that we can make a difference. People in the community were able to now will have access to their land again, to their native first fruits and access to salmon. And I don't know, I'm just always trying to look for ways to make things better, because there was a lot of harm done, and it doesn't mean that it's that has to be the end of the story. So I think that's where I'm going to end today. If anybody wants to check it out, it's on the front page of the Oregonian yesterday.
Thanks, Monty. It's in my office. Let's not forget. Well, good morning, everybody. And hello to those of you that are with us on Zoom. Anybody here for the first time? There's 2 or 3. I know 1, 2. Oh my goodness, a whole passel. Is it a New Year's resolution? You're a day early for the resolution crowd. Well, my name's Robert Beatty, and I'm glad you're here. It's a really big empty room without anybody here. I always get here an hour and a half early or so, and I always wonder, is anybody going to come? And then the party fills up. It's quite lovely. So I'd like to begin in a very traditional way, well, a modern version of a traditional way, which is the refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And I was thinking on the way over about the welcoming and land acknowledgement. And someone asked me recently, do you feel there's any problem with the, I forget the word that people use, the cultural, what's it called? The cultural, taking things from someone. Appropriation. The appropriation of, and I thought about that, and I don't feel the least concern about that. These teachings came from Burma and Thailand and Sri Lanka and a few other places. But they never belonged to anybody. They came from an awakening human being, the Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, who offered them freely to everyone. And the teachers of my generation who trained in Asia, we've had significant conversations about it, not about the cultural appropriation piece, but about what's cultural and what's the Dharma. What's needed for us to wake up? Because the Buddha didn't teach just it wasn't a self-help system, though we can help ourselves. It's a system of actually waking up. It's in my, what did we do? I am HO, the most important discovery that was ever made on the earth. Fire was important. I wouldn't be here without antibiotics, and there's a lot of other important things. But the fact that the Buddha broke through and discovered that it's possible while alive to be free from the conundrum, from the shackles of birth and death. That's a pretty big thing. And it belongs to no culture. And every single culture has had people who did it. Right? There's shamans and witches, quote, and the particular special thing about the Buddha was that he knew how he got there, and he had the capacity of teaching other people, so that during his lifetime, tens of thousands of people woke up. And here we are, all these years later. And hence the refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. This is dragging on me. When we sing this little song, it's not refuge in a man, ultimately a gray-haired old man. Though he wasn't white, he had a little advantage there, who woke up. And it's the waking up that the Buddha points to, like this statue behind me. It's not about the statue. The statue is, in the words of Joseph Campbell, keep your symbols transparent to the transcendent. This statue, and you can see this, and over there we have a lovely Kuan Yin. They're just reminders. They're reminders of something in us. And then this refuge in the Dharma, which is the teachings and also what we discover when we actually wake up, the way things actually are. And Sangha is the refuge in Sangha is the community, but bigger than that, it's the community of all life. So please join me if you wish. I take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. I take refuge in the Dharma, the way of understanding and love. Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya. I take refuge in the Sangha, the community of mindful harmony. Namo Sangaya, Namo Sangaya, Namo Sangaya. One of the wonderful things about the guitar is that it's such a teacher of the utter profound truth of anicca, impermanence. Listen to this for a second. Comes into being and then it's gone. If it weren't for anicca, impermanence, there'd be no life. Right? Many years ago, 42 and 6 days, oh no, that was his birthday, almost 42 years ago, I was at a retreat with Stephen Levine, a very famous, powerful teacher at that time who did a lot of work with the dying. And I was holding my 7-month-old son, who's now 42, in my arms, and Stephen said, "Oh, there's a bug. There's a corpse of a bug." How do you like that? Stephen said as part of his talk, every relationship ends in separation or death. Right? And then Luke squawked. I was in the hall. And he said, all of them. Now, parents don't like to hear that. How do you think of that? But of course, it's true. So let's stop and sit together. Let us fully, perhaps more fully than ever before, embrace this life. Because here it is right now. You know, there's that little saying, this isn't a dress rehearsal. This is, in fact, my life, your life. How do we know that there's life? Well, it's singing to us. The body is constant. It's nothing but life. So if you were to direct awareness into what you think of as your hands, they're alive. Or perhaps direct this mystery of awareness to the region that we think of as the face. It's alive. Same with the feet. And ever since a powerful moment not so long ago, when you took your first breath, the body has been breathing. And so this sensation of in-breathing and out-breathing, ever since the time of the Buddha, people have used this as a home base. And it's a fine home base because it exists in only one moment, and that moment is now. And each breath, just like those guitar strokes, guitar sounds, each breath has a beginning. Before it begins, it doesn't exist. And then there it is. And the beginning leads to or disappears to be replaced by the chest and abdomen rising, ultimately to fullness. And then there's declining, and then there's vanishing. In addition to the body, of course, there's also the mind. And there are probably some thoughts in your mind, in the mind. In fact, it's likely that you fall into profound trance states, states that include lots of stories, most of which have the song of the self in them. I, me, mine, mine. Most people, even many who've been meditating for decades, believe that the task is to get rid of those thoughts. It's not a very helpful approach. It creates a self that's trying to get rid of something. Much more helpful is what the Buddha suggested, which is cultivate mindfulness. Cultivate a kind of loving awareness, which in fact notices the thoughts, notices how random they are, how obsessive they are, how much suffering they create. And so we come home time and again to in-breathing and out-breathing. We can be aware of many details about the breath. Is it long or short? Deep, shallow? And where does it occur? Is it only in the chest and abdomen, or is it also at the nostrils? We can feel it. Can you feel it in your back and sides? Or we could expand the field of view to notice the hands and arms, the face. And we rest, at least sometimes, in the present moment. Right here with these livingnesses. Sometimes it's difficult to even find the breath. The tumult in the mind and in the emotional nature is just too great to penetrate in a way. And that's when it's useful, very helpful to in a certain way up-level the game and take as our curiosity, as our meditation object. What's happening then? And there's a list. There's lists for everything in the Buddha's teachings. It's a pretty foundational one that everyone needs to know. The mind can be clouded, obsessed with desire, with wanting something. So there's no contentment in the present. There's just this leaning into the future, an imagined future of wanting. Or there's aversion, a disliking. The mind strikes against the object, pushes it away. I don't want this. When that's happening, there's no way to be right here, except to be right here with that. And there's a powerful favorite for many, they call it restlessness, agitation, and worry, where the mind has no ease, no peace. But that restlessness, agitation, and worry is a fine object of meditation. And there's sleepy dullness, sloth and torpor. The mind has very little energy, doesn't want to be awake. That too is a very curious object to observe. And there's doubt. And in doubt, it's pretty difficult to be interested or apply oneself because there's uncertainty about its efficacy, its usefulness. And so when you can, come home to the breath, rest in the breath. Become as intimate as possible with the sensations of the breath. And when that's not doable, which of the 5 hindrances are preoccupying consciousness? Which of the trance states? And they come in groups sometimes. There is no way to do this wrong, really. The mind is as it is. How to wake up, how to be present, how to meet and accept reality on its own terms, one breath at a time. Mindfulness has a close companion in concentration, which takes an object and then stays there. So we can direct awareness to meet the sensations in the body of breathing and then stay there, or attempt to stay there very kindly. Another attribute that comes with mindfulness is love. And it's love of a particular kind. The Catholics have a good term for it. They call it agape. It's not love for a particular person, it's love for everything. And what it means is that whatever's happening is met with an open heart. So if the mind is very restless, it's loved, it's received, there's room for it. If the mind is filled with remorse or agitation or worry or anger or hatred even, self-hatred, ah yes, there's that. How can I receive? How can I put down the aversion toward unpleasant physical and mental states? Why, with mindfulness, concentration, and love, of course. And these are, in a certain way, skills we develop. Breathing in and breathing out. In the insight meditation, whatever arises, we relinquish. It leads us in the direction of freedom from identification with anything. Ultimately, it leads us to the direct realization that the self, the sense of I, is actually a bit of a fantasy. That what we are is everything. While we do have these separate identities, however, to honor them, we have some beautiful, sweet practices. One little taste of one might be, please embrace your body right now. Feel your body. Know it's here. And then bring awareness into your hands. Maybe let your hands stroke each other. Literally, maybe touch them. Do you ever think to thank your hands? One of the greatest evolutionary developments ever, the opposed thumb. And then we could be bold and intone something like, I love you, dear hands. I'm grateful for you. Or we could be very bold and say something like internally, I love you with your name at the end. This can cut through a lot of family and cultural conditioning, which has to do with non-self-love. I love you with your name at the end. And please now allow awareness to open in your legs and buttocks where they press against the chair. Notice you're breathing freshly. Allow awareness to awaken in your fingers and thumbs and wrists and forearms and upper arms and shoulders. And the neck and the jaw and the cheeks and the lips. There's a huge representation of the lips in the neocortex. Something we can be very aware of, lips. And then cheeks and eyes. And please now create an intention to open your eyes. And then notice what it takes to operationalize that and then literally open the eyes slowly. Opening the eyes. And noticing, staying mindful, noticing the fact, the mystery, the miracle of seeing. 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 I have 2 or 3 things I like to say, and I do so often, possibly for their shock value. The Buddha wasn't a Buddhist, and he didn't teach Buddhism. He taught the Dharma. What's happening here? And even more shocking, in a Buddhist meditation center, sitting silently in meditation isn't 1% of meditation. Being awake is what meditation is. And so I used to, and maybe I will this winter. I get to ski for free now. I'm 76. So it's a good, I don't know if I can, but I did all my life. I don't know whether it'll be as much fun. But one of the things about skiing is you've got to have quads. And I don't have much in the way of quads anymore. Because without quads, it's just painful and that's awful. And the reason, well, I used to go to the gym and get my quads strong so that I could fly on skis. The reason we come to the meditation spot and sit is to strengthen concentration and mindfulness so we can fly. So we can be in a quarrel with a partner and be mindful. So we can be working at the computer and keep waking up. This is what I'm doing. We can be driving the car and mindful. This is the gym where we come to strengthen certain capacities. Lest I forget, now that your eyes are open, to the degree that you're comfortable with it, please take a moment to turn around and look around and maybe make eye contact. If you feel like reaching out and touching someone's hand and they want to too, do that. Be aware of the contact that you make with eyes or hands. Not required. Hmm. First time I ever did that, I was inspired in a little church in a village called Yalapa. Any of you been to Yalapa? Before or after electricity? Just after? I was there 5 or 6 years in a row before electricity. It was quite something. So it's on the Bahia de Banderas. You go from Puerto Vallarta by boat for an hour. Anyway, little church. I went there to mass one Sunday morning, and small group, 25. It's much smaller than this. And at a certain point, they all went around touching each other's hands and wishing each other the love of Christ or whatever they were saying. It's beautiful. So in a few moments, I will invite Jim up to do some mindful movement, and I have a couple of announcements. I always have to overcome aversion with announcements. But they're important, right? They're part of what. If you're on our mailing list, you will receive in the next few days the annual fundraising letter, which is due on about November the 15th to come into your mailbox. So that as you look toward your end of year giving, you will remember PIMC. It's hard to get everything done. We're actually on the brink of hiring an admin person, which will make things for Gregory's heroic, but he can't do everything. So generosity. Generosity is the act of doing this and setting ourselves free from this. And so if this community supports you, consider using some of your disposable income to make it flourish. Lives change here. I'm probably not exaggerating. In the 20 years we've been in this building, I've had at least 100 people tell me that PIMC changed their life. I was on the brink of suicide. I was all kinds of stories. So that's one request. And in addition to that, you could become a monthly donor, and then your donation would happen even when you forget to come, which is a very worthy undertaking. Otherwise, please take a look on the PIMC website. There's Doug Pullen has a set of classes coming up on the Brahma Viharas, loving kindness, compassion, and so on. I have a class coming up on joy Wednesday nights, starting in January. Jim's doing next Saturday a Qigong workshop here. Kendall Summers does her every second Sunday night. We have a Be Queer Now group. We have a BIPOC group. There's all kinds of things happening, and you can be part of it. Oh, yes. Something happened to my wife at the beginning of COVID. And she went a little mad, and our house is full of plants. There's more than 80. It takes her 3 hours on Saturday morning to water the plants. I created a water catchment system. At this moment, there are 250 gallons of rainwater waiting because you can't water some of those plants with ordinary water. And she has sent these this morning, hoping that they will find good homes. We're not asking for resumes or anything. You're allowed to take them. We're not going to send anyone to check up on them. The one in the cork, I think, is really cool. That's been by our sink for about a year. And the pink, I forget what it's called, the pink lady, I think. That grows like crazy. Only take it if you have a house capable of. It's beautiful. Okay, I will stop. Jim's going to do a few minutes of Tai Chi, Qigong, and then I will come back and I'm going to speak on, it's funny, I have always thought of this as an introductory talk on the 5 hindrances, but I actually am realizing, well, I guess any of them can go to whatever depth they go to. But I'm going to do that with a particular flavor today. And that goes till noon, and then there's coffee into, oh, Doug is coming up. Doug is insinuating himself into the microphone. Come in, Doug, our fearless volunteer coordinator.
Thank you, Robert. I can still ski, but I don't think I can get up when I fall. So think about that. Good morning. My left.
Move that way. Move that.
Thank you. Oh, what a sea of kind and attentive faces. It's really nice. I do have a test joke, and so hilarity is not guaranteed. So Duga, Anicca, and Anata walk into a bar. And Duga says, life sucks. And Anicca says, this too will pass. And Anata says, you talking to me?
Did you make that up? Did you make? Huh?
Saying I stole that?
You have to go back to your spot.
Well,
Yeah.
I like making you nervous back here. So I was thinking of the resolutions. Has anyone made some resolutions to themselves? I won't ask you to say it out loud, or is thinking about some. Okay, some of that. So mine generally fall into self-improvement and ways I can be of service to others. So if that fits for any of you, I have found a way to bundle those two. So I'm paraphrasing the Buddha, who said something along these lines: if we knew the power to ourselves and others of generosity, we would never let another meal go unshared. So truly, generosity is for the giver as well as the receiver. And that's my favorite part of Christmas, is giving. Love giving things. So that would be your self-improvement part, is some more generosity. As Robert mentioned already, this center needs your generosity in terms of cash money. And the other thing, what I do is the people who bring their time and efforts here. And I have one job in particular that we need more help filling, and that is the AV Tech team, embodied today by Paul. Every Sunday, but also during these classes that Robert is talking about, we need technical assistance for the sound in the room, and also to disseminate the teaching on Zoom, Facebook, and YouTube. So if you are a person who thinks, oh, I have skills in that area, please think about coming and filling in some of those times.
Mhm.
If you're a person who thinks, I don't have those skills, but I can learn just about anything, you too can do it, right? We have a team of, Paul, Dan, JJ, Eric, Mish, Jamie, and others who are all excellent teachers. This system is set up at this point that it's not that complicated, right? So anyone can come in if you'd like a stretch goal and you want to learn something. Please think about it. You can talk to me, talk to Paul over here, sign up on the website as well. So we really need a volunteer or 2, 3, 4 to do that, please. So blessings on you.
Thank you, Doug. All right, Mr. Dalton, would you care to come and hold the floor? How many are going to leave?
Oh, what happened? Testing, testing. Everybody hear me? So we have gone from sitting to standing, but we can bring our attention into the contact with the earth. We can bring our attention to the spine, upright and supporting shoulders. We can move our hands a little bit and notice that there's new sensations. Standing and resting feels like this. Lifting, pausing, releasing feels like this. And I recently made a discovery. Let's do it again. Make the intention to do what the leader does. But I made the discovery that for years I've been thinking that Shibashi was a thing and I had to do 18 steps or it wouldn't be perfect. That's an illusion. That's ignorance. Shibashi is an energetic process that's constantly changing. Can you feel the beginning? Can you feel the journey, the middle? Can you feel the end? Sort of a pause, and then a beginning down. The energy of the body supports. And we know it because of the sensations that change. And what else in the universe changes? Everything. So Shibashi is an energetic process that teaches impermanence. One of the characteristics of what is real. And we can pause and try to stand still. It doesn't work really, because there's always change in the body. Breathing, rebalancing, eyes moving, lots of changes in standing still. Do what the leader does as a mirror. Reach up. Notice how many changes in the hand goes through the middle and reaches the end. And then do what the leader does. Changes. The hands don't look the same. The hands don't feel the same. The hips don't feel the same. There's sensations all through the body. Releasing one gesture, it starts another one. Starting a new movement, there's change. Can we stay mindful of change? Our teacher, mindful of impermanence. Now, release and lift, two different gestures, have a beginning, a middle, and an ending, and then together feels different. New sensations in the hips, the bottoms of the feet, mindful of change. Staying mindful of feet, shoulders, hands, and many more sensations than I could possibly talk about. Feeling the body changing, changing. Changing positions again. Pause and start another energetic process. There's no hand, there's no arm, there's no hips. It's change. That's what we're feeling. And it might be pleasant, or it might be unpleasant. You might have thoughts about this energetic process. Mindful of change. Releasing both hands. Trying again to stand still. And moving like the leader moves. It's just change. It's not my hand. It's not my arm. It's a changing, energetic process. Robert talked about Gym, G-Y-M. We watch change in our practice so we can take it with us when we leave. Carry your ally with you all the rest of the day. Mindfulness of change. And I'll be here Saturday to do a workshop with Qigong. Hope to see you there. Thank you.
All right. So, my dear friends, there's a practice known as the practice for frequent recollection. How many of you remember it or know it? I've been finding it very useful. People often come to me and say, how do I motivate myself to practice? Right? Because there's so many important things in life, so much to do, so many responsibilities. And way back 2,600 years ago, the Buddha suggested that there's a powerful way to remember to practice. And it's to remember the truth, remember what's really going on. So there's these practices, this practice for daily recollection. It goes like this. I am of the nature to age. I'm of the nature to age. I've not gone beyond aging. Is this true? I turned 76 on the 24th of December. What? I am of the nature to sicken. I am of the nature to fall ill. Sickness isn't a mistake. It's part of it. It's part of us. I am of the nature to fall ill. Is this true? Is it really true? I am of the nature to die. I am of the nature to die. Is this really true? Is it really true? All that is mine, all that is mine, everyone that is mine will become otherwise. All that is mine, dear and beloved, is another translation, will become separated from me. Is this true? Is it really true? My house, my family, center, the nation. All that is mine, dear and beloved, will become otherwise, will become separated from me. Is this true? I am the heir to my karma, my intentional actions. I am the heir to my karma, born of my karma, abide supported by my karma. Whatever karma I shall do, thus, whatever karma I shall do, of that I will be the heir. Thus should we frequently recollect, said the Buddha. Oh, hang on. Yeah. Hey. There's a shorter version. Put this on. Equally powerful, maybe more. Did you get the drum on camera? Maybe you can't. My death is certain. My death is certain. The place of my death is uncertain. The place of my death is uncertain. The way of my death is uncertain. The time of my death is uncertain. How then shall I live my life? Today. If you've been around for the last little while, you've probably heard me speak about what I'm about to several times, because it really crystallized something for me. I was walking in the night. I was down at Brighton Bush Hot Springs, walking down the road, and just present, just walking. I wasn't even particularly, quote, meditating, but very aware of walking, just here. And then a wandering mind came in, a pretty intense wandering mind. I can't remember the content, but in it, there was suddenly, oh, I forgot to do something. And there was this whole story, this whole world of the self. And then after a step or two, maybe, awareness blossomed. And that whole world of thought was gone. And there was a moment of reflection, kind of like a looking back. And it was, the first thought was, wow, that's the self. And I just experienced the entirety of spiritual practice. Because I was lost in the dream of the self with all its anxiety, with all its fearfulness and trying to be something and someone and all that stuff. And then it wasn't I, but then there's awareness. And I'm rather tired of myself. He's really tedious. Anxious, insecure, wanting to find some place to stand, to be stable. And it's one of the other realizations that have dawned more and more in this last year. It's like, God, here I am at this point in my life, I haven't arrived. Like, when do I get somewhere that I get to say, well, I've arrived, I'm here? I did, maybe it's probably 8 or 9 years ago. I declared PIMC a success. Because we always had this, it's like, well, when we get this done, when we get the wheelchair ramp done, then we'll have arrived. And there it is. And we're still here. And so this present moment keeps coming and coming and coming and coming. When do I get to just be somewhere? Well, every moment that I'm awake, right? When there's just, this is what's happening. This is what's happening. So I want to talk about the 5 hindrances in this context. How many of you, before today even, could have named the 5 hindrances? Oh, chunk, maybe half, okay. The homework for the rest of you is remember the damn 5 hindrances. It'll save you a lot of hassle. So, let's say, just for the sake of simplicity, I'm walking down that road, or I'm sitting right here, and I start thinking, it starts thinking about something that it wants. I want this. I want this vacation. I want this person. I want this. I want this. I want this. I want this. And I'm then walking down the road or driving down the freeway or sitting here, and I'm not here. Right? I'm lost in a trance in which the present moment is inadequate. Right? This moment is not enough. So therefore I want something. Maybe I want to buy something, or maybe I want to become something, but I'm not here. I'm lost in fantasies of it. And once hang on a second. Hurrying. Do I need to hurry? No. This moment, I invite you with me to take a breath and just relax. Be here. And we can go into our meditation routinely for decades, years. and always be wanting something. I want to get enlightened. Right? Remember 2 weeks ago when I was in meditation and I had that really wonderful deep experience? Or last year when I was on retreat, it was so blissful. I want that. This moment is now filled with wanting. And what is wanting? It's tension. So that's the colorful lust. Now, of course, wanting and lust and desire are natural parts of us. We wouldn't be here. We wouldn't survive as an individual or as a species unless we had this desire. If the reproductive desire weren't so incredibly powerful, we would never have made it as a species, right? That's why we go crazy when we fall into lust. Because the species, the life, so wants itself to persist. So this isn't this talk on the 5 hindrances isn't an anti-desire talk, but it is how to become conscious of desire and what it's doing to us, and how like walking down that road at Brightonbush, I was gone, right? I was lost in whatever the heck that world was. So, desire. 40-some years ago, I was in India with my teacher, a man named Munindra, and I was so desperate to get enlightened. I mean, because I was so depressed, actually. I had anxious depression, and I'd done no therapy yet, and I had all kinds of trauma. I mean, not compared to the trauma that's possible, but I was very unhappy. And I wanted the meditation I had the fantasy that I would meditate and I'll go off in a puff of smoke, and that I wouldn't ever hurt again. And so I was desperate to get enlightened. And I said to Manindra, what about this and this desire? I have this desire for enlightenment. And he said very beautifully, all these years later, I remember it. We were actually on a little bridge just outside the village of Bodh Gaya. He said, well, Robert, there's lots of desires. One of them is your desire for enlightenment, for awakening. And that's a really good desire because it'll steer you in a certain direction. And you could think of it like a thorn, and you'll use that thorn to take out all the other thorns, and then you'll drop that thorn. So there is a desire that takes us to our meditation spot. And then in time and with maturity, we realize that when we're meditating, we don't need to desire anything because it's all right there. So that's one. And I think of these as a polarity. I was gonna get the flip chart, but couldn't find the pens. So here's desire, wanting, wanting, wanting. Over here, its opposite is aversion, disliking. And aversion is also necessary, right? If we didn't, it's funny, it's so interesting watching what comes to mind. When my son, who's now 42, was, I don't know, little, 2, maybe less, I lived with my mother-in-law, a person named Joan McLaughlin. She and her daughter came as a package. And Joan and I remained very good friends until her death. But she came from Vermont, and she liked Fisher wood stoves. And so she heated her. I built her an apartment in our basement of our house, daylight basement. And so she had a Fisher stove, a really fine wood stove. And we had a toddler. What do you do with a toddler with a wood stove? So what we did was to build a small fire and get it small h hot. And then we let Luke walk over to it and put his hand on it. And he went, ah! And we never had to worry about the fireplace again. Wood stove, he got it. As soon as you get near that radiant heat, you don't go there. So he had an aversion to that experience, and there's a lot of natural There's a lot of things that aversion is very helpful for us. There's certain smells that we're naturally aversive to. In one little patch of my life, I was living in Geneva, Switzerland, doing blood research. And we were, the content doesn't matter. But I was using these poisons. One of the poisons was putrescine, which is the essence of rotting flesh. One drop of putrescine would empty this room, quite something. But we humans quite naturally go like this. We do smell with that. And it's an aversion that saves us. So this talk isn't don't ever have aversion, but let's notice how frequently we're having desire and aversion. And as in the second foundation of mindfulness, the first is the body, the second one is feeling, pleasant, unpleasant, liking and disliking. If we can't observe our liking and disliking as phenomena, then we always have to chase after the pleasures and push away the pains, even the most minor ones. We don't have any agency in our lives because it's unpleasant. I've got to get away from it. It's pleasant. I want it. And so we can sit here in meditation, or walking down the road, or driving the car, or changing a baby's diaper, or whatever. And the mind can be disliking what's happening. And that's a trance state, and we can stay caught up in it. Is this making sense? It's a natural part of our sensitivity. And so we can go through the world always disliking something. And it's hell on relationships. It's hell on oneself because one's self is doing things with pretty good frequency that are not likable. There are sensations in the body that are unpleasant from the start. Many of you know I have a new grandbaby, and I get to spend Wednesdays with her, and liking and disliking. And when she is disliked, I actually took a video of her the other day. I took a bunch, but there was one, she was right here, and I could do nothing. Nothing would appease her, and she was so mad. Oh man, just raging. And I mean, what can one do? Well, one can provide a holding, literally, environment, and she will learn to modulate that as she can. And we all do that. We learn to modulate our emotions. But liking and disliking, whenever we're identified with liking and disliking, we're corks bobbing on a wild ocean. Then another polarity. Then there's restlessness, agitation, and worry. Ever experienced them? Periodically, and this morning was one of those times. I was up early, sat for an hour or so. Anxious. No content. Anxious. Looking for some content to be anxious about. This is why. And I mean, there's enough in the world to be anxious about if we want to focus there. There's enough in family to be anxious about. There's enough in life, in our health, to be anxious about. However, and if we don't know what to do with restlessness, agitation, and anxiety, we are a restless, anxious person. Right? We're not very nice to be around for ourselves or for others. And we can't really inhabit the present moment. The pleasures of the present moment, the normalcy of the present moment, are not experienceable because we're lost in a trance. Remember back to that thing I said about walking down the road at Brightonbush. I went from simple presence into madness, really, a madness trance. Restlessness, agitation, worry, sloth and torpor. Oh. Yeah. Are they there, Paul? They're not here. Yeah. Can you grab them, please? I have so few, there are so few props in meditation teaching that if you have a prop, it's really good to have it. Are they both there? I hope. Dang. It's a huge room in there. It's actually a terrible mess. Oh, well. Tapir's missing. Oh, well, bring that one. I had a student a few years ago who gave me these. I'm missing the other one. This is sloth. I actually live like this a lot. Sloth and tapir, or sloth and tapir. Asterisk. 2 years ago, I went for a vacation in Costa Rica, and I visited the sloth sanctuary in southeast. Terry. Baby sloths are the most desirable little creatures. They don't let you touch them because for good reasons, but they're so cute, and they move really slow. And they move slow. Sloths move slowly because their diet is these leaves that have almost no nutrition in them, and they have to maintain. They move slowly. They come to the ground once a week to poop, and they're highly vulnerable at that point. Anyway, and the babies fall out, and the mothers will not go rescue them if the baby. That's how the sloths get to the. So anyway, this is sloth. And you know sloth and tapir, I'll put them here. This is where you can make donations, by the way. And sloth and torpor looks like this in meditation. What's going on there? It's a very profound phenomenon. Because and the way I can act it out, I think it's pretty effective. It goes like this. I, Robert Beatty, meditating for 52 years now, in charge of my mind, right? I'm going to sit up straight, and I'm going to stay present. And I have 3 times in my teaching career felt completely out of my seat, crashed in front of a group. Many times I've gone like this. And in fact, you'll notice that my computer is like this. You never set your computer like this because it'll gore you. It's always back like that. Tricks of the trade. No, yeah. What to do about sloth and torpor? Just like the others, become really aware of it. Notice it carefully. Because something really remarkable is happening. There's this experience of I'm making the determination to be present, and that I dies. It disappears. And then some moments later, there's maybe minutes, there's a miracle happens, and there's a self-reflective consciousness again. It's awake. Who did that? We like to say, oh, I woke myself up, but there was no one there to wake oneself up. It happens on its own. Now that's weird. And then you sit yourself up, and then I want to come back to that. But the last one, which is a sort of a different character altogether, which is doubt. And I think of doubt as the practice slayer. And one of the antidotes for doubt is the company of good friends. Because you can fall into doubt, and it's so convincing, you'll stop meditating, you'll stop coming here. It's very powerful. So doubt, and it's doubt in the Buddha, doubt in the practice, doubt in yourself, and it's doubt, despair, dispiritedness. And it's a powerful trance state. Now, there's a piece that I missed, or I can't quite figure out how to get to it. So there's lust and hate, restlessness, agitation, and worry, too much energy, too little energy, sloth and torpor, and then doubt standing all on its own. These are called hindrances. Why? Oh, I don't know if any of my books are back there. I should get some back. Oh, there's one. Okay, my book is back there. You can purchase it and make a donation to PIMC by doing so. There's a chapter on the hindrances in there, which is really fantastic. And I can say that because my with person, Laura Musikansky, I think she wrote it. She said, no, these are your words, but it's so clear and well written. I think it wasn't. But anyway, it's a marvelous thing. It's about the 5 hindrances. What if they weren't there? You know what it's like when they're not there because you've been awake before. You've been just here. It's just being here. It's just life. It's just wakefulness. There's no self in it. There's no I, me, mine. There's no story in it. There's just here. And it's so just here that there's not even memory from it. There's not someone there making up a story about it or being caught in a story about it. It's just life being present. And there's no dukkha. There's no suffering in that state. There's just awareness being aware. Hence, it's unfortunate that the hindrances got the term, they got the hindrances. And a lot of the training and a lot of the things you read about it set it up so that we fight against the hindrances. That's not very helpful. What really works is consciousness and love. Love meaning there's room for everything. And so there's knowing this is sloth and torpor. At first, I know for a long time, maybe for years, I suffered a lot with sloth and torpor, partly because I was sleep deprived and I never got enough rest. One of the first interventions from my teacher, Ruth Dennison, on one of the early retreats with her, was she came and she shook I was sitting there, I was determined to get enlightened, and I would be the first person in the meditation room in the morning and the last person in the evening because I was a little competitive. And she came and shook my shoulder and said, you stay in bed tomorrow morning. You're always tired. It was a huge intervention. Everyone else got up and I felt, it's like, oh no, they're getting ahead of me and all that stuff. And then I slept in till 11 or 12 o'clock. And then I went and sat. Something totally different happened. I was actually awake. I had learned how to park and I could do 2-hour sittings easily. And that's the mistake of some monk went to Ajahn Chah and said, I can sit for 3 hours. And Ajahn Chah said, well, so what? I've seen chickens sit for days. It's not about duration, it's about wakefulness. So There are antidotes. The antidote for greed, desire, lust is maybe to think through, do I really want that? What would happen if I got that? Also, the practice of generosity is an antidote for lust. And there's antidotes for hatred. Give a gift to the object of your hatred, perhaps. Or practice loving kindness. The primary antidote for all of them is awareness. For restlessness and agitation, concentration is the antidote. So to work more at being present here, one point. The antidote to sloth and torpor is to get enough rest, for one thing, but is to imagine a bright light, or to sit in front of a bright light, or to stand, or go do walking meditation. And the antidote for doubt, the direct antidote for doubt, is the company of good friends. Having Dharma buddies is really useful. It's really useful for a variety of reasons. One among them is that your old friends will think you're really crazy when you start to meditate. And you want to talk about things like, this happened and my mind did this. And I see that I'm angry at that person, but it's really not about them. It's about people don't want to listen to this. It's the meditator madness. Oh, good. Sometimes the words just refuse to come. It's all right. There's something about bringing the contemplation, I'm of the nature to die, with the 5 hindrances. When the 5 hindrances are absent, so is the self. And all the desperation, the anxiety, the fear, it just isn't there, because what there is consciousness, presence. And so funny, I haven't thought of this in quite a long time to speak it this way, but insight meditation is actually, not metaphorically, the practice of dying. Because it's the practice of letting go of the self. And it's the self and all of the self's wants and fears and attachments that lead to most of our suffering, or all of our suffering, actually. Because I don't want this to be true. I don't want it to be true that I'm aging, getting sick and dying. I don't want that to be true, that's true of my children. It's a very strange, rather strange thing to do. I sit there with my grandbaby in my arms sometimes particularly when she's really sound asleep. And I remember that she's going to die. Puts things in a very different light. Right? She's a visitor, like me. A few months ago, she didn't exist. And then, as I tell it when I tell the story, a man and a woman came together in a very weird way. And then fertilization happened and cell division happened and then implantation happened and then birth happened. And then there's this little girl. And she'll go through somebody training and become somebody and have her life with all of its successes and failures and so on. And then if she's really lucky and we're able to pull it together, and she'll be old and die. Or maybe sometime on the way she'll die. And how wonderful if she and we could live our lives really much more happily because we know how to let go. That's what I was looking for. That we know how to let go and not get caught in the desperation that we have so much for things to stay stable. Because they're not, are they? My life is much more unstable than I like to let on. The Buddha talked about the vicissitudes, praise and blame, gain and loss, fame, disrepute, sickness, health, life, death. It's completely out of my control. And boy, there's a lot of suffering around trying to keep it in control. You experience that? Like more than 500 times a day. I want it to be like this. I don't want it to be like that. And one last thing with that then, I guess, is that it's really all about love, isn't it, as well? That if I were to do it externally, speak of it externally, any dissatisfaction that I have with someone outside, or most of it, it's about me. Because people are just being who they are. And who they are can be pretty darn disappointing. We just had all the kids home for Christmas. Now that's exciting and interesting, and it brings up various likings and dislikings. But then if we took it inside, how much suffering do you do because you don't like who you are? Or you don't like this aspect of yourself? I'd love myself if I didn't have this or do this, or if I didn't have this compulsion or this addiction, then I'd be lovable. It's the hindrances that are liking and disliking. And thanks to the Buddha, yay, it's actually possible to see them operating and not take them seriously, to not buy in every time. So that's the talk on the 5 hindrances. They're worth tattooing on the back of your hand. And, well, one more very practical suggestion. The next time it's time to meditate, and it's really good to have a time, but the next time it's time to meditate and you're not going to, pause for a moment and ask yourself, which of the 5 hindrances are in blossom? Oh, it's that, right? And could I perhaps go and be a meditator full of being mindful of self-hatred or of fear? Could I, which underlies the hindrances? Could I do that? Or the next time you're in meditation and for the life of you, you can't find your breath. I mean, why can't I find my breath? Well, which of the 5 hindrances is in blossom? And then all of a sudden, boom, you're in practice. All right then. Please don't change positions. You say, let's meditate, let's get right. But let's be awake. Notice the aliveness in your body right now. Isn't that marvelous? It's tingling, vibrating. It's always doing that. It's a very interesting thing at any moment. Hmm. Well, thank you, dear friends on Zoom, for being here. This is the last time we will meet in this year. Though it's kind of a silly thing, the New Year's thing. I mean, the planet is going around the sun. We determined at a certain point it's the new year. Nothing changes. It's human construct. It's not even New Year in a lot of the world. They've got the New Year wrong, right? So let's form a circle. Come up here, and the folks on Zoom can see us, and we'll do a little closing. And thank you, Paul, for doing the tech. All these people, how many people? There's 37 people on Zoom who couldn't be there if there wasn't someone doing what you're doing.